All right, you can go ahead and get started.
All right, welcome everybody. I'm glad that you're here for office hours, which is creative use of 5310 funding. We'll have an exciting speaker. I'm going to just let you know a little bit about the National Aging Disability Transportation Center before we do an introduction on the speaker. We've been around for a little while now. We were launched in 2015. And we are a partnership of the National Association of Area Agencies on Aging, which is pretty much one of the support programs for senior services, and Easter Seals, which is also a national disability services program. And our work pretty much is built on our prior efforts as the National Center on Senior Transportation, and then Easter Seals Project Action, which also did a lot of work around the ADA and accessible transportation. And our goal basically is to promote the availability and accessibility of transportation options and serve the needs of older adults, people with disabilities, and caregivers. And our primary focus really is around issues for 5310 grantees and issues for the 5310 formula grants. So that's why this topic, I think it's so right on for us. All right,
Ken,
little housekeeping.
Ken, could you speak up a little bit more?
Okay,
People are having a little difficulty.
Let me see if I can, turn up my volume a little bit here. Hold on a minute.
Or move your mic closer.
Yeah, I'm gonna move the volume. Tell me if it's getting better. Better?
A little bit. I'm wondering if it's where your mic is.
Yeah, let me see. All right. Let's see if I can turn up the sound.
Or speak louder as well.
I'm going to go to audio settings and turn my. Is it better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I just turn it up near to the top. So,
excellent. Thank you very much.
all right, sorry about that. I usually have it around mid-range, and that usually is okay, but not this time. So anyway, just a little housekeeping. This session is being recorded, and so you'll be able to listen to it again in a few days, or have it available for other people within your organization. We want you to keep your videos on. We want this to be an interactive session where we're going to have like a small meeting where we can all get together and have a little bit of FaceTime. And then put your questions in the chat box, or if you want, you can just ask them and not be on mute, and we'd appreciate that too. Additionally, the whole session is closed captioned, and you can get the closed captioning by clicking on the closed captioning button, and then you can see it in the chat section. All right. Let's do a little bit of introductions. Like I said, this is our National Aging Disability Transportation Center's office hours session. And our presenter today is Jeremy Scalzi. He's the Director of Business Development at M7, passenger transportation company that specializes in non-emergency medical transportation, but also looks at other kinds of mobility options, and is very much a regional operator in Connecticut. So we want to welcome Jeremy. He's got a lot of exciting things they're doing, so let's get started.
All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me. And thanks, Ken, for the introduction. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about creative uses of Section 5310, the funding that's available through that section, and really just talk about how you can get the most out of that. Throughout my presentation, I'll discuss a little bit of synergy that you'll have as well with other grants that are available through the FTA. So utilizing those monies to basically make the most efficient use of everything that you're doing with your business could really just impact a lot of people's lives in a healthy way. So Ken, if you can go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about M7. So we've been a disability advocate for years now. And really, it's all about the inclusion and new freedom for persons with disabilities. So if you're not present, then you're not included. Inclusion really happens when you're breaking down barriers. So what that means is we really just want to allow everybody to be present and available, whether it's with their families, whether it's for a town hall meeting, to be able to vote on an issue in their local area. It's all about just getting there safely, and getting there when you want to. And that's the beauty of freedom of mobility. If you go to the next slide. So a little bit about us. Oh, actually, I think I put a transition in this one. Getting fancy. We were founded in 1987. We're a family-run business. My father, Bill, founded the business with only 15 vehicles in 1987. Now we're over 200 vehicles, and about 50% of them are wheelchair accessible. So we pushed hard. I think it was for about 11 years. We really fought hard for wheelchair accessible vehicle legislation to be passed. And finally, in 2009, it was. We were the first available 24/7, 365 on-demand wheelchair accessible company. And through this partnership with the government, we met a lot of people in the disability advocacy community, and we started a new Freedom Fund program that provides 50% discounts to elderly and disabled individuals who are just looking to get around, whether it's to the grocery store, whether it's to their family's house, or just to a medical appointment. It really just allows people to go anywhere they want, when they want. So in 2011, we partnered with CNG to launch 110 green vehicles. So those are powered all by natural gas, and we have our own fueling station in our facility in West Haven, Connecticut, which is very exciting because we take our social responsibility to our community very seriously. So whether it's through emissions or through helping those who need more mobility, we'll help any way we can. We partnered with the Accessible Dispatch Program in 2012, and we dispatched wheelchair accessible vehicles in New York. That was a very exciting experience, and it also allowed us to get more of a dynamic understanding of different markets and how metropolitan areas really just the ecosystem of disability transportation in a metropolitan area like New York. So it's got its lessons for places like Connecticut as well. So we've been a non-emergency medical transportation company as well as a taxi company for a very long time in Connecticut. We just introduced door-through-door service in 2016, which is an elevated level of service where basically our drivers will go into a hospital, into a residence, and assist a passenger in getting to the vehicle. Whether you're wheelchair bound or even just have a difficult time walking, our drivers are trained to be able to provide that transportation assistance so that, if you need to get up through a ramp, we'll help you do it. And I think I have a couple other, so the 5310, well, yeah, that one's really just mobility as a service. Just a quick point that, micro mobility options and looking at the granular level really helps a lot of people's lives. So the more detail oriented you are in transportation, the more people you'll be able to help. So what is 5310? For those of you who don't know, the purpose of the funding is to enhance the mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities by removing barriers to transportation services. So there's a lot of things that this funding can be used for. Normally, it's used for capital expenditure. And what that means is you can buy vehicles with it. computer hardware, computer software, anything that supports the mobility of people with disabilities and seniors is typically eligible for a project. So there's a lot of creative ways that you can use this money outside of just capital expenditure, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Eligible recipients includes nonprofits. It includes the local government authorities, operators of public transportation. For-profit companies is actually a recent development. And we found that through partnerships with the state and basically mixing the private sector with government, it really allows the industry to promote a higher duty of care for their passengers. It raises service standards and provides more flexibility to everybody who's in need of this type of transportation. We'll go to the next one. So who's involved? This is the federal government and the state government. They work on the basically allocating the funds. So they decide who's eligible. They decide how much money goes to different organizations, and a lot of it comes through partnerships. So if you are a transportation provider and you're curious as to whether you can get involved with this funding, you just simply contact your local municipalities and they'll be able to help you out. A company like M7, I put our name there, but it's really any transportation provider. And that comes in many forms. Nursing homes who have one vehicle to be able to transport their residents, they're eligible for 5310 funding as well. And then partners of M7. So one thing that I'll highlight later is we actually partner with a lot of nursing homes and specialized care facilities to provide service to them rather than them using their own vehicles. Because from an efficiency standpoint, it's very helpful to contract with a specialized transportation provider, as they have more resources to be able to provide that transportation to everybody on a more personalized level. Which again, just provides more freedom of mobility instead of waiting for a scheduled ride to come through the transportation employee at your nursing home or specialized care facility. You can simply just make a phone call. So it's really just allowing people to be able to choose when they actually are traveling. And last thing I'll say about state government is we've had a great relationship with the Greater New Haven Transit District, Greater Hartford Transit District. A lot of different transit districts know their areas very well, and they know who needs help. So whereas people in a metropolitan area might be able to get away with simply taking city transit or even just going down the street with help from one of their family members, that might not be available in a more rural area. So it's really getting to know the individual areas and understanding the problems that are presented with the different demographics in each area. So this is our 11-year-old baby. We started the New Freedom Fund 11 years ago, where we basically applied in partnership with the Connecticut DOT and the Greater New Haven Transit District. This was the first use in the nation of using 5310 funding to discount rides for the disabled community and for seniors as well. So what this does is M7 provides, somebody will call into M7, let's say, and they'll load $50 on their card. The government then takes the 5310 funding money that we normally would use for capital expenditure, and they apply it towards a credit for transportation services, which is a really, really big move, because what it allows people to do is, whereas they might be able to go out for groceries a couple times a month, a few times per month, now there's funding available to really be able to take more trips, go where you need, But not only that, it's not relying on public transportation to dictate when you can go. There are operating hours attached with public transportation and other modes of transportation that they'll take. We're a 24/7, 365 business. So if you wake up at 9 a.m. with a hankering for McDonald's and you need to go there for just some food, you can do that, and you don't have to rely on a set schedule to do so. We've had a lot of positive feedback on this program, and it's since expanded to the Greater Hartford Transit District as well as the Kennedy Center in Bridgeport. And this is really the start of something that's been highlighted over the years as a very valuable tool to people. So as you'll see with my next slide, we expanded the scope of this to a new program that we launched called Encompass. And Encompass is a very exciting program, and it operates with the same concept of discounting rides, but in a different way. So you'll see that the Encompass program, we partnered with the Greater Hartford Transit District outside of the new Freedom Fund. And this is beyond ADA. So you can, not only is available for people with disabilities, it's available for anybody over the age of 65. It's demand response or advanced reservation. So you can call whenever you'd like and schedule a ride. And basically what it is the passenger pays $5 for the first 8 miles and then a discounted rate for on a per mile basis after that. And why this is so important is what you can do with the 5310 grant monies is the government will pay for a certain portion of the rides. If a company like M7 acquires vehicles using the 5310 grant monies, that's a huge discount to us. The federal funding basically allocates around 80% of the cost of those vehicles. So if we can acquire vehicles at a discounted rate, that frees up funds to then use for other projects. So we took that mentality and we applied it to this FTA Sandbox grant that's designed to promote innovation in the transportation industry. And so what we did is we acquired a few vehicles at a discounted rate with the 5310 grant money. And then we said, hey, we have this leftover money here. Why don't we partner with you in the Sandbox grant? We'll provide discounted rides. So we offer a 30% discount on rides for people with disabilities and seniors. And then the government basically picks up the rest of the tab so that the net result is a very, very discounted ride for everybody who's taking the service. So it's $5 for 8 miles and a very discounted rate after that. So the bottom line is when you synergize with 5310 grants in other areas, the net result is a very elaborate service that affects a lot of different people's lives. So we split the discount with the FTA. That opens up their programs by 2/3. So it allows them to expand the scope to people that normally wouldn't be able to get that transportation service. And also the service standards and the security rises. We outfit all of our vehicles with cameras, with vehicle tracking devices, and 24/7 customer service as well. So if you lose something in the vehicle, if you need to access a security footage for any reason, we're there to assist you with that as well. And so that really feeds into my next slide, which is talking a little bit about involving private transportation companies like ourselves in these government programs. So a lot of 5310 grant money is funded, is basically allocated towards nursing homes with 1-passenger vans who need to provide transportation services to their residents. So these vans they have large seating capacities, so you can fit a good amount of people in there, but they have high upkeep costs. it's not a personalized service. And what I mean by that is you're going to have to, it's either you go to a set location or you take multiple stops to drop people off at multiple areas. And it really just has limited hours of operation. So people who, really need to plan their days out according to certain time periods that they're eligible to travel. When you get a company like M7, we specialize in transportation. We perform our maintenance in-house with our mechanics. We have our personalized service, but also it expands the scope of the service to then, let's say that one vehicle goes to one facility to drop somebody off or pick somebody up. We can then drop that person off and take that vehicle and go to a different facility. So it's really just allowing the vehicles to be able to service as many different nursing homes and specialized care facilities as possible, expanding the scope of the entire transportation services and really giving everybody more of an option to travel freely. I hope I explained that well. It's a little bit of a complex scenario. So that's really what I wanted to talk about for this presentation. I kept it short because I know that we want to really get into the details with our discussion. So at this time, I'd welcome anybody who has a question about our service or anything about 5310 grants or other grant opportunities in transportation as well.
So I stopped the presentation because now I want us all to be in a room, discussion room. So if you want to turn on your cameras, that's great. You can unmute yourself if you have a question or comment for Jeremy. Thank you very much, Jeremy. It was great to hear about how you're working with, as a private sector, with the public sector. And I know that it brought up a lot of questions for me, but I want to open it up to the floor to the attendees first. Does anybody have any questions for Jeremy?
Jeremy.
This is Peter from Honolulu. Jeremy, how did you use did you use the 53 funds to purchase your GPS and all the onboard technology devices?
So we used a portion. We used a very small portion because we had this technology prior to this program. But when you're operating a transportation company, you always have to be improving your technology. That's the main thing that you can do to really help yourself, is always look for the new technology. So we have the latest routing technology that we just implemented. We have dispatch software. So there was a portion of monies that we used to subsidize our dispatch software, but we prioritize it more towards the transportation side, subsidizing the trips, and then also vehicle expenditure, because those are really the big items where, a vehicle might have wear and tear on it. Dispatch software does not. So it's really just about deciding what's most important for your business.
Thank you.
April, I think you had a question.
Yeah, actually, I guess it's, so Jeremy, I have worked with Bill and Eric over there many years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the Northwest manager for the Kennedy Center.
Uh-huh.
So we're actually applying for 5310 grant funds to expand the taxi voucher program.
Yep.
So we will be in touch soon with you and Bill, because I'm sure you know the deadline for the grant applications is due August 3rd. And we've been in conversations about this for years, but we're being especially motivated this year because, a lot of the funding doesn't need matching grants. And we know the DOT has earmarked money for us already. We just have to get the MOUs and the application in. So I'm excited to continue working with you guys.
That's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, we actually just sent out a slew of letters about that. So
Fabulous.
yeah.
So let me ask you, April, how has that relationship worked? Were you there when it was initiated 11 years ago? Or?
No, I actually wasn't even with the Kennedy Center then. I've been with the Kennedy Center for 7 years, 5 years in the role of mobility. But the program is especially popular right now in Southwest Connecticut, the Bridgeport, Trumbull, and Shelton areas most specifically, but is very popular. You know, people get that an extra 50% of transportation funds. However, I have been working with Eric and Bill, and I guess now Jeremy as well, on promoting the M7 services because a good 50% of the 44 towns I cover has rural transportation. So as you know, rural transportation tends to be more of a challenge. But because of M7, we are able to offer one of the rides that is most difficult to get, and that is when you're crossing transit district lines, trying to get someone to, for example, Hartford or New Haven from Torrington. That's always been a battle.
Yeah.
And, you know, even private funding, you know, private rides, which of course M7 would be for them, can cost them quite a bit of money. So this taxi voucher program, expanding it, would allow them a 50% savings on those rides because M7 already will service them because they're going to one of the 35 towns in their area. But I'm sure they'll have additional business and we'll be able to serve more customers with the expanded program.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. That's great to hear from the other side of
Yeah.
that partnership as well. We have one question I'll ask in the chat, and then then Vicki, I'll have you in the queue. Jane asked, which dispatch software did you purchase?
So we've had a few over the years. Right now we are with iCabby, and that's been a great relationship. It's really it's got great dispatching services as a whole. The GPS tracking is great, and we've paired that up with a few different softwares. For instance, Nauto for in-vehicle camera security as well as vehicle tracking. So there's a lot of different technologies rolled into one, but having a company like iCabby who is able to synergize with other technologies is a huge benefit. So that's what we're using currently.
Great, Jane, did you have any follow-up to that you wanted? Okay. Vicki, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, good afternoon. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Marvelous. Well, I'm attending from the Austin area that is in Texas, and we have been receiving 5310 money for a long period. And we're a nonprofit that is looking to be able to expand ourselves to be providing more for some city needs. And we're currently under a volunteer model, so I'm just wondering if Jeremy has any recommendations on how to make that transition. That's my first question, and then I have a second question, so I want to hear on this one first, if I could.
A nonprofit that's into so you're a nonprofit currently, and you're looking to change your structure to for-profit, or are you looking to expand the scope of your transportation services more aggressively as a
We would continue as a nonprofit.
Okay.
And I'm muting you in between, Vicki, because we're getting feedback, just so you know.
Okay. So that's a great question. I was thinking that I would be stumped by at least one. So I don't have that much experience with nonprofit from a business side. I know that we partner with a lot of nonprofits to provide transportation services to them because we've been doing so for a very long time. But I would say that you could treat it as a normal for-profit company. And actually, what I mean by that is if you create a transportation plan, an expansion plan that is viable, I'm pretty sure that the government would prioritize 5310 grant money to a nonprofit. Everybody's a little bit always scared to give transportation funding to for-profit companies. So I believe you guys get the first round of funding, but don't quote me on that.
And I'll open it up to others because I know we have some other nonprofits on the line. Does anyone else want to comment to Vicky's question?
I just want to add that the Kennedy Center is a not-for-profit organization, and we receive 5310 grant funds almost every round that we apply.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Great. And then Vicky, if you want to unmute yourself again for your second question.
Thank you so much, Carrie. So Jeremy, you are a for-profit, and so since I am not familiar from that standpoint of how your 5310 works, is it such that you apply for this funding and it is like a reimbursing grant?
It basically you have to provide a certain portion of the money up front. And then there is partial reimbursement, but it's really, there's a lot of different things that you have to prove for the capital expenditure, because there's two different things. There's the trip allocating, there's a trip allocation, so the discounts for trips, and then that's basically on a, I think it's a monthly basis where you provide a list of all of the expenses throughout the month. And then there's also the capital expenditure part. That's a very complex process. You have to do a lot of stuff. There's also, you have to source most of the vehicle. Most of the vehicle has to be sourced in the US. So there's a lot of different stipulations on that program. But my best advice would be to just, if you know somebody in your local municipality, they are the true experts on this. And if you work with them, like we work with the transit districts with us, it's a very, very good relationship to have, because you understand different pieces of the puzzle, and they come together very well.
Knowing that we have some other 5310 applicants on the line, any other comments about your experience with the 5310 in your community? Or with your state, or with your regional plan commission, or whoever is that entity?
Well, we've been using the 5310 funds for many years, and primarily to purchase the replacement vehicles for our fleet. And each year when we apply, I'm always just focused to the vehicle replacement side for the vehicle. But I was wondering whether I should maybe next year not just ask for the vehicle, the funds for the vehicle, but maybe add on to purchase this iCabby, or something like that. Would that be possible? Is anyone else doing that? Just wondering.
I'll open up to the floor.
Yeah, that's very possible. It really depends on the whole program is based off of what it's going to be used for. So whether your vehicles fit the scope of the project, you have to be able to prove that the dispatch software and the vehicles are both going to enhance the freedom of mobility for people with disabilities and seniors as well. So whether that's starting I would say the most effective way to do that is to start a subsidiary service that's geared specifically towards those issues, like the freedom of mobility. Once you do that, it's very easy to prove that that's actually where the money's going. So it's just all about making sure that you can prove that and telling the story.
Yeah, and Peter, a lot of it depends on, do you apply through the state for your vehicles, or through a regional plan commission?
Yeah, we go through the state Department of Transportation. They're the one that are administering the 5310 grant. But I've always just focused on the applying for vehicles, not necessarily a combination of maybe adding dispatch software. We've been using Excel for many years, and it's really outgrown its use. We're growing in volume, and I wish we can have something better. And so this really gave me a good idea of what I should be asking for. Hopefully I can do both the vehicle and the dispatch software.
Yeah, and check with your state, because different states manage this program differently. And so like I'm in Wisconsin, and they do allow for capital and operating expenses. Some states will just distribute 5310 for capital purchases. So that's a discussion you can definitely have with your state DOT. And but it should be, I mean, according to the federal regs, it's an allowable expense.
Certainly would try that. Thank you so much.
Mhm. Other questions we have from the group? Josh?
Yeah, thanks. I had a question about kind of using it on vehicles. Like if we were going to convert some vehicles to be able to be wheelchair accessible, is there an option for using that instead of kind of purchasing only new vehicles, or is it really kind of focused on just the subsidy of like the 80/20 with new vehicles?
That's a good question. And the answer is, I believe that would be applicable. So one of the stipulations for eligible projects is preventative maintenance for 5310 funded vehicles. So that's if you already have the vehicles. But what I would say is it varies state by state. I've heard cases of being able to convert vehicles. So again, that goes back to checking with your local municipalities, opening that line of communication between you, because not only would it answer your question better than I could, but also it's a more standing relationship where they can help you with other stuff as well. But yeah, the correct answer is it varies state by state.
Sure, and it's even regional based on the needs locally, right? That's kind of how you write it, and that's how it works in.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. And the only other piece I kind of missed a little bit, apologize, but kind of how using funds for subsidizing rides. Like I'm trying to figure out how to create a more of like a community collaboration of a pool of monies where maybe some of it comes from 5310 and some of it might come from, you know, other nonprofits or employers and such. I missed a little bit about, I guess, how would you model a ride subsidy budget into a 5310 type of grant if you're looking to kind of create a pool of monies that people could pull from if they're in the disability or qualifying world. I guess just trying to figure out like what that looks like.
Well, I would think that the best way to do that is similar to the way that we did it, which is you have to make sure that the trip cost is allowable in the state. So once you figure that out, it's really just making sure that you have the correct partnerships in place, and also that whether the need is there. So proving, you know, whether through a state case study, you can really identify the issues, put it in writing, add statistics to it, and it makes it a much easier story to tell.
Sure. So like if I've got a couple of grants going that were kind of in states that don't really have the same levels of services as some other states. And so they're trying to take the data back and say, you know, here's all these success stories of where we were when we funded the rides. Here's how people were employed. Here's how the numbers went up, and then kind of showing that. So we would have to use the data, show them, here's kind of where the funds will be allocated. Here's how we need them. And then we write that into a 5310.
Exactly.
Cool. Thank you.
Other questions? Jeremy, who are some of your partners, and do you get guidance from, you know, the user groups to which you serve?
It's an interesting question. That's a very well, I would say one of our biggest partners is the Kennedy Center. We've worked with them for a very long time, and they've been a great resource for us. We also, you know, on a broader scale, the Transportation Alliance is a great industry collaborative organization where you can share ideas with other transportation providers and really get the most out of, you know, the meetings that they hold. They hold a lot of webinars. They also host annual conferences that are very useful.
Is that a nationwide organization?
Yes.
Transportation Alliance?
Yes, it's a national association. Actually, it's international as well. But also the last partner I would mention is the local transit districts. I cannot stress enough how valuable a dialogue with them is.
Mhm. John had a comment in the chat that he recommends TripShot and EcoLane for on-demand dispatching software. There are a lot of different software companies out there that can meet different needs that you may have depending on the services that you offer. Thank you for that, John.
And actually, one thing I'd add to that is, Peter, if you're looking at different dispatch softwares, I would also think about the your need. And what I mean by that is, are you more of an on-demand company, or is everything more pre-scheduled? Because there's a lot of interesting routing software out there that really makes the most out of one vehicle's route. So different routing companies can basically take all of your pre-scheduled trips and make routes, pre-scheduled routes for all of your vehicles. So it really just depends whether you want to focus more on the on-demand stuff, whether you think that a pre-scheduled service like that could help you.
Thank you. And April commented that route match. She's heard good things as well. Peter, did you have another question?
I'm just nodding my head because we do have a combination of both. The on-demand is somewhat very limited, but most of our trips are pre-scheduled. So, just looking at which one would fit us the way we operate. We already have established routes. We know where our vehicles would go every morning throughout the day. We just want to be able to record that and be able to use the software in a much more effective manner than Excel.
Yeah, and if you're interested in routing software, a company called MoveX, MOOVEX, is a very interesting company that does pre-schedules. They have a very complicated algorithm that makes the most out of each vehicle's trip.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Here's a great question. You had mentioned that you also provide non-emergency medical transportation trips through Medicaid. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Yep. So what challenges have you encountered in mixing the NEMT trips and other human services trips?
That is a good question. It's, we don't distinguish the two. I think that's probably my best answer. Is every trip is important. And it's not about distinguishing the trips. It's about looking internally to say, how can I get to all of my trips on time? No transportation provider is above, having delays on trips. Sometimes there's inclement weather, sometimes there's an accident on the road. It happens. It just depends on what you're doing to solve that. So investing in technology, doing things like that to really limit your tardiness goes a long way. So my answer to that would be, we don't distinguish the trips. It's really just making sure that everybody gets picked up on time.
Jeremy's being modest too, because M7 has an excellent reputation here. Some of the others, going back to even when Logisticare had the state contract for Medicaid, when I first started, the number of complaints we had against VEO, Logisticare than VEO, was astronomical. But I have to say, I've definitely seen an improvement since M7 started picking up some of those rides as another subcontractor. And it's so funny because when someone's not familiar with M7, but they're familiar with Medicaid and they start seeing your van, you're showing up to pick them up, they're like, oh no, M7 service is mine here. I'm like, no, wait a minute. You happen to have gotten lucky and gotten them as your, your transportation provider, and they can request just M7 through the preferred provider form through VEO, but they don't always understand that. So they think the M7 is, regularly servicing like the micro transit in that area. But no, they have an excellent reputation, fantastic customer service. So
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you guys do a great job.
Wow, I lucked out having you on this call. Yeah, and the one thing I want to say with the NEMT trips as well is, April raises a good point in that we've benefited a lot from creating direct relationships with places like the Kennedy Center, because when NEMT trips are facilitated through a broker, the facilities and the transportation provider have very little interaction. So there's no way for us to really understand and solve their issues that they're experiencing, because it has to go through a middle party. So allowing us to have a direct channel of communication like we do with the Kennedy Center has proven to be, invaluable. So, and it helps a lot of different people with the issues that they've been having, because our call center staff can handle a lot of the issues that they're having directly with the broker, instead of the patient actually having to call up and make changes themselves.
Mhm. So are you able to combine NEMT rides with other trips? Are there any restrictions with Medicaid or the state or your contract that don't allow you to do that?
As in shared rides?
Yes.
Well, since COVID, shared rides are a thing of the past. Unfortunately, I'm a big environmentally conscious person, so I do love the efficiency of using one vehicle for as many people as possible. But that being said, it's just not safe right now. I would say in a perfect world, that still would not be the case. Medicaid transportation is a different service than the ones that we offer on a specialized service, for instance, the New Freedom Fund and Compass. And while you might be able to combine two Medicaid trips, I think that it really just depends on what type of transportation you're providing. So, it's typically good practice to separate the accounts and keep them within their own realm.
Okay. And so you're doing Medicaid rides, and you have some of these discount program rides. Is all of that the software that keeps those separate, that understands like where you get, when you're reporting on the 50% discount and getting 5310 for that, or the 30% discount or Medicaid funding? Is that all the software that's figuring that out for you?
So we separate them by account in our dispatch software. So we know when we pull that information out of our dispatch software, we can run reports on it. Going back to the technology synergize comment that I made, we have a very advanced billing software that we launched recently that really breaks that stuff down in a very helpful manner. So we separate it by account and then just export it from there.
Okay. Are there other questions from the group?
Carrie, this is Margaret Thompson from Rides for Ridgefield. We're a small nonprofit providing information and rides. I wondered, Jeremy, would you talk a bit about how you're managing the COVID precautions, both from riders and drivers? Do you require vaccinations? Or?
That's a great question. We do not require vaccinations. We do require protective gear. And what that means is for our drivers, all of our drivers have to wear masks. We actually do a lot of COVID positive transportation. And a lot of different facilities have relied on us for that. We set our vehicles up with plexiglass barriers, and we also gave our drivers all of the protective gear that they would need for a COVID positive transportation trip. There are a few that are actually eligible to do that. It's not our entire fleet. That was sort of a specialized service that we launched. But we have all of the protective gear, and for our normal rides now, we simply just ask that you wear a mask, and we do have partitions as well. And we also, I almost forgot, we spray the vehicles down daily. we do daily scans.
Basically the CDC guidelines.
Exactly.
Right.
They
Thank
know
you.
best. So
Thanks.
Thank you. We have a time for just a couple more questions.
Well, this is Peter again. With regards to COVID, we've got these big 5310 minibuses. And so our capacity went from 14 passengers to now 3 per trip so that we can have that social distancing. Are you experiencing any of those kind of impacts in your end, or are you still, filling up your vehicles to maximum capacity?
so we don't have any vehicles that large. Our largest capacity is 4. So we typically provide more micro transit options. So smaller, more personalized trips. Just because that we've worked with the transit districts to really make that possible. We have not seen that as of now, simply because our vehicles are smaller.
You had mentioned the FTA Sandbox grant. So, 5310 is a yearly or every other year grant, depending on what state that you're in. But the Sandbox and some of those come about every so often. You can't really count on them. They come up, and it sounds like you've leveraged some of the partnerships that you've had to apply for them. Who have been those partners and then they had to apply on behalf of you as a partner rather than you as a private entity applying, a private business applying, correct?
Yeah, those are the transit districts.
Okay.
So yeah, you apply through them, and you just make sure that they're on board. Their word is stronger than ours when it comes to assessing the needs of their people. So
How important was it for you to have kind of a vision of what you want to do in place before any of those grants came up?
I'm sorry, I think my internet cut out briefly.
Sure. How important was it for you and your partners to have a vision of what you want to do in place even before that grant funding came along? Or was it, we see this grant funding and now we want to figure out what to do with it?
Well, I think the vision's always been there. Our mission statement is really geared towards, providing transportation to everybody. It's who we are. It's always who we've been. So we provide equitable transportation. So that's our vision. The project scope varies on the vision because, you see what you want and then you're like, okay, well, how much of this can I actually get done? We want to get 100%. And we've seen that over the years. It started off with the New Freedom Fund, which was not nearly as large as the Encompass program that we launched as well. So again, it really just depends on the timing of it all.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, whether it's you haven't applied for 5310 or any of these other grants yet, is to have that vision ready. What else do you want to do with these funding sources? And I think that we're not always on the human services side of things. We're not always great at that. We are so often trying to just get by and to do the service that we have now, that it's really important to have that. Where do we want to go in place? So thank you for sharing that, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, that I was just saying.
Okay. So I'm going to, we're just a few minutes before the end. We do have time for another question if anybody has one real quick, but I wanted to put up these slides for everybody. Certainly go to the nadtc.org website. That's where we will post the materials, the PowerPoint from today and the recording. And then a link to the Section 5310 funding source and the guidance on that particular funding source. So this is our contact information. On behalf of Ken and myself and our colleague Heather Edmonds, who is also on this call, we appreciate your time, Jeremy, for presenting your experience with 5310 with us. It was a great learning experience. Thank you for everyone else for joining and participating in these office hours. We will be sending out an evaluation along with the materials. Please take some time to fill out that evaluation so we can continue to improve on what we do to make it as useful as possible for you. Any final questions or comments that anyone has? Great.
Yes, thank you. It's interesting.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you to Carrie and Ken for having me. It's been a pleasure speaking with you all, and our website is m7ride.com, so you can always contact us, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Just because we have 2 minutes left, what does M7 stand for?
Well, it's funny. We used to be Metro Taxi, and our phone number is all sevens. So when we rebranded ourselves to have a shorter name, we figured we'd take the M, we'd take the 7, we'd put it together, and that's what we got. It was a fun little project that my parents and I undertook a few years back now.
Great.
Very
Thank
cool.
you. Thanks so much. Well, this will end our broadcast for today. Have a great day and a great weekend. Thank you for joining us.
All
Have a
right.
great
Thank
weekend.
you. Take care, everybody.